everyone. It's time to eat, drink, and be merry with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Third Friday Travel Writers Show with the International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association. You can check them out at their website, IFWTWA.org. We call them IFWTWA for short, but it's an amazing organization that connects destinations and travel writers, photographers, food, wine, travel writers as well. So it's a very cool place to visit. And we love these shows because we get to have either a panel discussion or a discussion with various writers about their favorite destinations. Today, we're going to be talking about taste of place, food, wine, all that good stuff. We're going to go around the world pretty much because our second part of today's show, we're going to chat with Debbie Stone, and she's going to tell us about her chocolate and cheese and croissant adventures all through Europe. But starting off now, our first guest today is Amanda O'Brien. She is known as the Boutique Adventurer, and you can go to her website, theboutiqueadventurer.com. And welcome to the show, Amanda. How are you?
I'm great, Lisa. I'm thrilled to be here.
Exciting to have you here. Nancy and I are currently located in Virginia for this week when we record this. And I know that's one of the destinations we're going to be chatting with you about today is the Monticello Trail in Virginia. We're going to talk about Washington State, another favorite place of ours, and Rioja in Spain. So, but let's dial it back first and talk a little bit about your start into the food, wine, travel world. And so I know you've got a lot of websites as well as the boutiqueadventurer.com, but I know you started out life in Australia, right? And now you're in London. And then a whole bunch of places in between.
I started out life in Australia. There were a few years in the US as well when I was growing up, but I moved to London like 20 years ago. So London is home. And I was always passionate about food and wine. My parents were very into food and wine, but I worked in marketing mostly, but I was a huge traveler. But about 7 or 8 years ago is when I started the Boutique Adventurer, when I was doing like a break between jobs, and I sort of fell in love with it. And yeah, it took me 2 or 3 years to get it up and running. And obviously COVID hit a little while after that, but yeah, everything is now up and working. And I write a lot about different places, mostly in Europe and North America. And I love writing about food and wine, probably more than anything else.
So did the wine, because I mean, Australia's got amazing wine. I mean,
it does. Yeah. And so back like in my 20s, I visited a lot of the wine regions in Australia before moving when I was 30. So I do always joke, though, that growing up in a new world wine region means I kind of like stronger, bolder taste. So sometimes some European wines are a bit too subtle for me.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the old world versus the new world wines, right?
Exactly.
They don't have as much alcohol content either. I'm just saying. I just had a lesson from a winemaker who told me that. I said, well, maybe that's got something to do with it. And she's like, not really, but it's interesting too. South Africa, that's where, I grew up in South Africa, and the wines over there, I always kind of put South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia together in the wine world. Wouldn't you say they could have their own, distribution as one?
They could, well, particularly maybe not so much New Zealand because it's that bit cooler because it's more south, but definitely Australia and South Africa. Like I love South Africa wines. I've been to Stellenbosch and a couple of the areas around, but there's certainly more places to go there. But I think particularly with a lot of the reds, there's like those kind of big, blousy, jammy, full-on high tannin reds that I love too.
Now, what about Spain, Rioja? And everybody wants to go to Rioja just to say Rioja. I mean, Rioja.
Exactly.
So let's start off there, because that's got to have, because I know there's European, but Spain has got like a little spicy, like, there's Tempranillos and all that good wine over there. So Rioja's got to be fun for wine. You've got great articles. And by the way, everyone in the show notes, you'll be able to see the links to Amanda's articles and Debbie's articles. And also once we get everything up on our site on blendradioandtv.com, we'll link everything. But you will find these stories right on her website, theboutiqueadventurer.com. So Rioja, tell us a little bit about that adventure, because there's the wine, but then it's got to also go with the food. I'm feeling like it's like lighthearted you know?
Well, it is. And the funny thing was, Lisa, it's not very touristed, which I
Oh,
really, it's such a big name, Rioja, right?
mhm.
And it just didn't feel like it was massively a huge tourist spot, like, being in Venice or anything like that. So basically, Rioja's got two main towns, Haro and Logrono. And Haro is like a hilltop, super cute town. And what's great about Haro is you can literally walk down the hill 10 minutes. And 5 of the major wineries of Rioja have got huge tasting rooms there, because it's right next to what used to be the railway. So they used to
Mm.
store wine there. And they've also got restaurants, things like that. And as you mentioned, Tempranillo is the key grape of Rioja. And in Rioja, there's 4 different ratings on wine, on red and whites, depending for how long they've been cellared and in some cases bottled. So they're quite strict with all the rules. And they've got to be put into American oak as well, interestingly, not
Mm.
French oak, American oak. Food-wise, the second town
Ooh.
of Rioja is called Logrono. And I don't know if you've ever been to San Sebastian and
No.
enjoyed their Pintos streets, which are great little bars. So Logrono has got a couple of streets that are pedestrianized, and they are filled with these like little bars that you go to. And like one bar will be famous for its mushrooms, and another bar will be famous for its patatas bravas, and all these different bars. And you get little glasses of Rioja wine as you go everywhere. And you'll see everything there, from small children in diapers to old people being helped walk along. It's got the most wonderful atmosphere.
Oh
And
my
the food
gosh.
is amazing and dirt cheap, and you'll get an awesome meal.
Yeah, see, that's what it was like living in Mexico. You had these,
Mm.
I mean, insanely amazing meals that you'll never get again. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It just because like the moles were always go back 2 days later and sorry, now you're getting this. What was
Yes,
there was there, and it's like it's the same thing as when you find a really good wine and then it's going to go away. Like it's that's the beauty of food and wine, right? Is that it's like this, it's
exactly.
like temporary art. But you better savor every bite and sip. It's temporary because you can't just
Exactly.
get it again,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
even, I mean, a lot with wine obviously depends on the region, but there's a lot of key wine regions like Bordeaux where there's such big changes in the climate every year and the weather that you never know kind of what you're going to get, which is why they have to blend. But it also kind of makes it exciting to figure out like, oh, what's different and unique in this vintage versus that vintage and what's going on. And, it helps you understand that nature's role in all of this, plus then give you more of a sense of place, I think, about that wine region and help understand it better.
Mm, I like that. And so going over from Rioja, because and looking on the pictures on your side and everything, it's just like it seems so colorful too. Like they like to have fun, it sounds like, over
Oh
there.
my God, absolutely. And I said, so passionate about their food and, of course, the wine. And there's some amazing modern architecture there as well. Like Frank Gehry, has built a hotel and winery there, which is just every color of the rainbow in these modern, moving sort of pieces of steel. And it's just one of those things where your mouth drops when you see it against the countryside. So
Mm.
yeah, it's quite interesting there where they've also got this whole architectural level as well as the wine itself.
Mm. So, okay, so we go from Spain, and you were just there. I mean, that was this year, right? That you were there. That
Last
was
year, but it was like June,
last year.
July. So yeah, so
Oh,
all
okay.
3
Oh,
places we're going to talk about today I've been to in the last 12 months. Yeah.
nice, nice. And so let's go over to Charlottesville, Virginia. So we're in Virginia right now, and Charlottesville. Unfortunately, when you hear Charlottesville, Virginia, we think politically of some really horrible things that happened. But let's
Mm.
turn the other side of the positive is wine, and I think more people need wine in the world. I'm just going to say, but
Always.
Virginia, I mean. Virginia has all these trails. Like there's the Virginia Creeper Trail where you just go down this highway and it's like you're in yeah, it is kind of swampy actually. But Virginia is an incredibly beautiful and diverse state. You know what I mean? It's just so
Mm.
yeah, there I mean and the wineries now I have to say we have not done Virginia wineries. So now I'm feeling like talking with you, I'm gonna have to run out to the wine store here and
Oh,
find
definitely.
out.
There are several wine regions in Virginia, but the oldest one is the Monticello Trail, which is because Thomas Jefferson, actually, when he was in France as US ambassador, he actually brought over some vines because he thought the climate around Monticello would be perfect for grape growing. And he was actually right. But the thing is, he brought the wrong varieties with him and they didn't really know what to do. So they actually did plant them, but nothing really ended up happening until a guy called Gabriel Rouse, an Italian, came to the region in the 1970s. And he was the one that then started matching up varieties with the climate, basically, and the terroir to say these grapes will do well here for these reasons. And that is when Virginia wine really kind of got going.
Mm. Now, I like that you went to Loving Cup Winery because it's one of my favorite Rolling Stones songs.
And it's organic. It's an organic winery as well. And I mean, I think that's a big difference when you see is the new world and including America in is there's so much innovation that happens in wine. But in Europe, in most regions, they can't be that innovative because there's too many restrictions, because there's all these rules on, hey, you can't say it's a Rioja wine unless it's been an American oak. You can't call it this unless it's been aged for this long. These are the only grapes that can only be Tempranillo.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what's exciting is when you go to the US or Australia or South Africa, they're just like using every kind of grape. They're like, we're just going to give this a go and see what happens. And let's try this. And we're not going to
That is so South African, what you just said. Oh, let's just give it a go. That's so like British, South Africa. Yeah, that you're on that side of the world. That's it. I love that because I love that spirit of just give it a go. And we need to have that. But then you say the other side, here's all these rules. Spain and having it to have an American oak is just still blowing my mind,
I know.
Saying that.
Because it's usually American oak. It's a stronger effect on the taste profile versus French oak, which is usually a bit more subtle. But yeah, with that but what I notice, like when I'm in the US, then the wineries themselves, there'll be a lot more differences versus when you're in wine regions in Europe, where there'll be a lot more in common across them. So in the US, you'll be going like, in Washington State, which I'll talk about in a minute, there's one winery, Treveri, that is just doing sparkling, and sparkling reds, whites, all sorts of different things with it. So you can people will do anything. So you get a lot more variation when you're looking to travel and visit vineyards in an area.
Where we are right now, we're right outside George Washington's distillery.
Oh,
just because you're talking about Thomas Jefferson. And so, when we had to get to where we're going and we're like, hey, we want to go to the distillery. And it's kind of more a little touristy now, apparently, from our friends here that told us about it. But they said, he did actually have a distillery. So now people have done something with it, but you can actually see the remnants or a replica of his distillery that he originally had.
Wow.
Is that
That's
not
fantastic.
cool?
Yeah, it's very cool.
I mean, it's so weird to be on this because we were always on the west side of the country and to be now completely on the eastern side and like up, right? It's like this whole other feeling of what America is about versus being on the west or like LA or Arizona and all of that. It's completely, I don't know. It's older in regards to colonial architecture, that kind of thing. Obviously not our indigenous people. They're way older than anything that we talk about in history, human history here. But it's just so different. And so when you hear, like you're saying about Thomas Jefferson and, then like here's George Washington, who also brought hemp. I'm like, you go, George. But he's a happy dude. But it's kind of interesting how these people just started bringing things over, from different places.
Absolutely.
Did that happen in Australia, do you think, too?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Because, it's most of the vineyards in Australia, like everybody's basically vines come from France to begin with. That's how most people get everything started. And a lot of it is all around being inspired by Europe, but then bringing it back and going, okay, so now we've been inspired by that, but what can we do with our local ingredients, with our local terroir, with our local climate? What can our take be on it? Which is when it gets quite exciting and innovative, as I said, earlier, because also there's so much more freedom in those countries versus when you're in Europe, where things are sort of done in a certain way in many cases when it comes to food and wine.
Yeah, because they kind of have to keep their heritage and tradition. If they started it, you don't want to lose it all. You know what I mean?
Well, also they've built these amazing brands. Like, you think about Champagne, for goodness sakes, and Bordeaux. And that part of that, if you're, my marketing background, if you're offering up a brand, you need a level of consistency. People are buying into that brand because they think they know what they're getting. So you have to stick to those rules. And also they've built up such a name for themselves. If you open it up too much and change it, you're going to risk upsetting a lot of people and potentially really damaging that brand. So, it's just kind of different. I don't think one is better or worse because they've got more fame, so to speak, than some of these other regions like, the Monticello Trail. That's what they've got it. They're obviously a lot older. It just presents different opportunities and different challenges.
Right. And I want to go to London. You're in London now. You're based out of there. In England, what is blowing my mind that England is now becoming and producing wine. And I never thought that would happen.
Good wine.
Really?
I know. Well, it is kind of global warming, but but even I was in Champagne last summer and visiting the vineyards there. That's even the French are talking about English wine, particularly English sparkling. And actually the French are even buying up land in the south of England to have the land and from a global warming sort of point of view to get that going. So there's some really exciting stuff happening with sparkling in England. But at the moment, it's still relatively, it's not cheap. It's relatively expensive because obviously the production, the volumes aren't there yet, but it's growing at quite a pace and the quality is excellent.
Okay, so what's happening in regard to food pairings with England wines? Because now I'm thinking, we lived in England for about a year and a half, 2 years, I think it was, when I was a kid. But I'm going back to, and we've done a lot of interviews on food of England. So I know you're not going to get certain, here's your mince pie or whatever. Or what are you going to, when you think about British food and then British wines, you've got to kind of keep that integrity there, right? So, are we doing this? But Americans kind of do the charcuterie board and that kind of thing, right? But when you get to England,
the perfect pairing is English sparkling with fish and chips because the high acidity cuts through the salt and the fat. So with the salt of so it's a perfect pairing of the two. You can. It's quintessentially English sparkling wine, and obviously sparkling wine is also really nice with afternoon tea. It really does suit a good scone or scone, and it is traditionally served a glass of sparkling with afternoon tea.
Okay, so I know people that will actually pair with not hot dogs, corn dogs, white wines with corn dogs.
Oh, so, look at. Yeah, it's all about, so basically, the saltier that the food is, salty food brings out a lot of flavors in wine. So it can actually improve the wine and
Now, would you put malt vinegar on the fish and chips if you're drinking wine or champagne with it?
Oh, I personally don't like malt vinegar, so that's a different question.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? You're there. How could you not have malt vinegar? Oh no, you're killing me.
But because it is quite acidic, I would say it would actually help because you'd have the salt and the acid then going together, which should bring out the sparkling
sugars.
even more.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Now, do you eat Marmite? Do you eat Marmite? This is a big question.
You're asking an Australian because in Australian, it's all about Vegemite.
Yeah, Vegemite, Marmite.
So I will have Marmite on occasion if I feel like it and Vegemite's not available. But given the choice between the two, it would always be Vegemite.
Okay, but you're doing that. So that's important. I'll let you go on the malt vinegar since you eat Vegemite. It's important. And listen, if you have too much wine the next morning, toast and Marmite or Vegemite helps.
Vegemite on toast is,
the lifesaver.
It's awesome for difficult mornings after.
It's like the extra wine head when you're wine headed in the morning. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
It does everything for you. All right, so let's go to Washington State in England because it's kind of interesting going from Virginia to Washington State because they're kind of similar. They're just completely opposite sides of the country, but it does have that lush and just the weather's it's interesting, but they had volcano stuff happening and ice ages and, they had all kinds of stuff happening. And I love that you went, we've been to some of the areas that you went to as well in Washington State. Did it remind you of England at all being out there?
Not overly. And interestingly, where the wineries are is obviously kind of lower ground and warmer, like Yakima Valley.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're on the other side.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of into, and that's kind of, there's also like all around the Columbia River area, there's several wine areas, but that and the Tri-Cities are kind of probably the best known. So the grapes themselves are out there, but the great thing they're doing in Washington is really embracing tasting rooms. So even if you're just in Seattle and you don't have a lot of time, there's actually Soto Urban Works, for example, where I think it's 7 or 8 of Washington's wineries have just got little tasting rooms there. So if you don't have much time, you can still go there and try some Washington wine. And then there's Woodinville, which is about 40 minutes from downtown Seattle, which is filled with wine rooms, as well as a few vineyards like Chateau Ste. Michelle, which is the biggest and the original big wine producer in the Washington state area. So you can even go there as a day trip and try loads of wine. So I think they're doing a really good job in Washington that no matter how much time you have and what you can do, you've kind of got a wine option. Or you can get a car and drive the 3 hours, and head to Walla Walla or to the Tri-Cities or Yakima Valley and then have the whole winery experience.
Yeah, I like the winery experience, especially too, because it's so beautiful driving out there. And you're right, going, eastern, it does get like hotter. It's got a hotter summer than you will get off on the coastal areas. And so they have, Malbecs and Mourvedres that come out of that area are incredible.
Yeah, and the Syrah is their big grape in Washington State. It's all about, that's what they're known for having, is really, really good Syrahs. But they also had some, I'm a little bit more of a white drinker than red, but they had some great whites as well there. And as I said, it's very creative with trying different grapes and trying different methods. Which is really fun to go and find out, like, right, what are you doing? What's different here? Which is what I always want to know as, the writer is, what do you do that's special and unique? What are you best known for? Because that's ultimately writing about wine for me. I'm not really writing for sommeliers. I'm writing for people that like wine, that are going to come to an area and would like to try and go, right, if I'm going to visit 3 or 4 wineries, which ones should I visit that I'll probably like the wine? Or if I really like sparkling, I should go to this one. That's who I'm writing for, is help them organize their time. So however much time they've got, go, right, these ones are close together, or these ones, if you really love a big blousy red, this is where you need to go, so that people can figure out what's going to delight them on their trip.
I love that you went to La Ecole. I'm never going to say it right.
Yeah,
Number
Ecole.
41.
Yeah, Ecole.
They've been on our show from Walla Walla, and they sent us for our anniversary last year. Our magazine turned 25 and radio show 15 years. And then we had a whole other in our tours, 10 years of traveling full time. And so they sent us wines that signified each year. So we had a 25-year-old wine, a 10-year-old, and a 15-year-old wine.
Oh,
they
my
were
gosh,
so
what
sweet
a
to
lovely
do.
idea. Yeah.
They were so sweet. And just the wines are incredible, and the history of it, with it being part of a schoolhouse. I think some of these wineries, like getting some of that history is really cool to me too. But they've got good soil.
And the schoolhouse is great. I've been there, for a tasting, and you go up on the first floor, and they've got an outdoor space, so you can kind of see out, and you can tell you're in an old schoolhouse, right? They've modernized it, of course, but you can still feel like you're in a schoolhouse when they're doing it. So it's a great spot. It's literally almost the first winery you hit when you drive into Walla Walla. It's like Cole 41. But yeah, it's a really good one.
And I saw that you went to Pike Place Market. When you were
yes, so believe it or not, I actually lived in Seattle for 3 years when I was a teenager.
Oh, okay.
Way back when, and I used to love going to Pike Place Market. That was my favorite thing to do. So it was great to go back, and I did a fantastic food tour there. And interestingly, there were a couple of places I remembered that were still there, which is pretty amazing. Like 35 years or something later. But what a place. It's just fantastic. I got fish thrown over my head, I had all truffles and had lots of amazing food experiences. It's such a wonderful place.
What is some of the craziest food you've eaten? Because you've been to over 70 countries?
Yeah, no, I've just hit 80 actually. I'm proud to say.
Well, excuse me. Holy cow. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Now you're really because I will pretty much try everything. So I have eaten whale, definitely up in Norway. I have tried that, which I didn't really like, but I sort of felt like I needed to do it.
That's like doing lutefisk.
Well, and obviously as Australian, I've eaten kangaroo several times.
Oh, wow.
Which again, and with a lot of these things, it all depends on how it's cooked. So if a good chef is making it, usually they can kind of make anything taste pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. I think so, because it's so different. The meat, it's like, everyone's started getting into bison here in this country,
Oh,
which
okay.
makes sense because it
Mm,
is actually kind of, American buffalo and
mm,
but it's grass fed. And so
yeah.
it's not the same as cooking beef. That's completely different. And so it's taken a while for all of us to learn how to do that, that it cooks differently. It's just like eating something that's, not factory farmed
Mm,
versus something that, an animal that's caged, not cage free, excuse me.
mm.
And it's just different. The fat and everything's different because the
Yeah.
animals aren't in how they're eating is different, so how you cook it is to be different as well. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But traveling, I think the importance is food and wine really it tells you, or even distilleries, et cetera, and breweries, tells
Mm.
you about the taste of the land and the cultures. Do you find that in travel? That
Oh, absolutely. It's my favorite thing. It's like learning about the food and the wine gives you such an insight into a city or a country or an area because you then get a feel for the climate, what's the land like, and then the wine will influence what kind of food they have. The food will influence what kind of wine they have. What they eat will influence what they're like, and based on whether it's a warm culture or a cold culture in terms of their climate. And I think you kind of get underneath it, plus all the stories that go along with food and wine and how
mm,
things got developed and what worked and what didn't. And, it really brings to life a destination.
yeah. And now let's talk about your next what was your very last destination?
My last destination was Malta in Europe.
Ooh.
Yeah, where
Okay,
I
what
ate a
did you
lot of
eat?
rabbit. A lot of rabbit. They're very into
No,
rabbit there.
bunnies.
I know, bunnies. I felt a bit the same way, but it was like, oh, this needs to,
And it's
and they've
around
got their
Easter time.
I know, it was so wrong. But they've got a really interesting version of pizza they do called fatira, which are like these little sort of pizzas that they make, which are absolutely delicious. Um,
Mm,
so yeah, that was an interesting food destination because they're not that far from North Africa, but obviously they're
mm.
closer to Europe. So you've got a lot of interesting influences going on there.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. I love that kind
mm,
of food too, because like I love like North. Oh, I'll eat anything from Africa pretty much. Well, not everything, but I have done weird things. But that sounds bad too. I've eaten weird things from Africa. Let's put it that way. But I don't know. There's something just so I don't know. The food is just so like relaxed. I don't know, like a pizza, they used to say pizza where we were
mm,
in South Africa. Still cracks me up to this day, but
yeah.
I don't know. Do you say that in Australia? Don't tell me you say
No, we
pizza,
say
do you?
pizza, pizza. Like
Pizza,
everything in Australia's
pizza.
got like a long vowel to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Oh my gosh. But where are you going next?
So I'm actually off to Florida and Texas next.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, I'm going to be in Tampa and St.
Nice.
Petersburg next week, and then the week
Beautiful.
after in San Antonio, and then in Austin
Oh,
Hill Country. And I'm going to be trying some Texas wine, which I'm really excited about.
oh, and it is good. It is good. And San
Yeah.
Antonio, you've got that Riverwalk area.
Yep,
Oh, you're
that's where
gonna
I'm
have a wonderful
staying.
time.
Yeah, no, it
Nice.
should be an awesome trip. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, welcome back to the States. I'll just say that now.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, I'm so glad we caught you, before, in between flights here.
Oh,
Before
thanks.
you go, how long have you been part of IFTWA? I always want to touch on that because
Oh,
I think it's
yeah, of course.
important to have these organizations.
Oh, so do I. So I'm a new member. I just joined this year. Didn't really know about them. So right now they've actually, what's terrific is they're getting together a group of us that are outside the US who are kind of doing some calls to say, how could this best work for people outside the US? But I'm actually going on their big conference in October. So I'm super
Oh, sweet.
excited. Yeah, so
Oh,
it's like a wine cruise. There's lots of wine involved. So yeah, that'll be a great opportunity then to get to meet loads of people and to really get a better understanding of how it works. And as I said, it's really cool that they're taking note of overseas members and saying, right, how can we adjust to make
yeah.
this a good situation for you? So
Well,
yeah,
I know they
exciting.
were very, very strong in Australia for a number of years, and I mean we've watched the organization grow over the years, and it's
Mm,
amazing what they've done. And during COVID, how they stood up and kept doing webinars and still connecting writers with destinations, with wineries, all of that. I think that is
mm.
fantastic. And so everyone, that cruise is open for members and non-members. It is in October, and you get to cruise from Vancouver down to Southern California. I think that's pretty darn cool. So go to
Oh, definitely.
IFWTWA.org. We will have a show just dedicated to the cruise and the conference, I should say, to the conference, but it's also networking. And I think writers do need to hang out together and learn from each other and help each other. And that's something we've also seen with the members of IFWTWA is that people help each other. Hey, we're going here. Do you know anybody here? Oh, yeah, you need to check this person out, meet that person, because everybody travels. And if everyone can help each other, it just makes the world better. The more we travel, the better we all are in all kinds of ways. And the more food we get to eat and wine we get to drink. So I'm just saying. So, Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. I do want to tell everybody that you do have some other websites too. thediscerningcat.com. Go, if you're like Nancy and I are all into this, thedogsnobs.com. This is fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to geek out and go down rabbit holes, go see, but don't eat the rabbit. But
Unless you're Malta.
Yeah, you've got your new interesting facts website. Oh my gosh.
That's
I
right.
think so. That's going to be cool as you travel. Is that how you find out about your different, all the fun facts from the travels, or are you geeking out and going down rabbit holes?
Well, it's kind of a
computer?
mix. Yeah. So I started the cat and the dog ones during lockdown. So that's obviously when travel was slow. And I started the facts one then as well. So the facts one has a lot of crossover with the travel side where it's interesting facts about different places. But with that one, facts one, I do a lot of psychological facts and history facts as well. So it's it's
I
nice
love
to
that.
have like a portfolio and some, different things that you can write. But travel's like my passion. So that's kind of my baby, my biggest one. And
Yeah,
where
but
I
you
spend
find
the
out so
most
much
time.
but history, I mean, that's the thing when travel, you can go to a museum and see like, oh, this is where they did plug this into someone's brain. Or,
Yeah,
you get to
exactly.
see
Exactly.
you see the facts come to life through travel,
Yeah,
and that's the beauty.
absolutely.
So everyone, that website is newinterestingfacts.com. Thank you so much, Amanda. Everyone, IFWTWA.org is a website. Keep up with us at bigblendradio.com, but stay tuned because Debbie Stone is next. And Debbie is going to be telling us about cheese and chocolate. Oh my. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That was really fun.
Hey, everybody. It is time for part 2 of our Big Blend Radio third Friday Travel Writers Show with the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. As you know from listening to part 1, today's episode is all about a taste of place. And our second guest is travel writer Debbie Stone. I know you've heard her on Big Blend Radio for quite a while. In fact, I believe we actually met her through the International Food Wine Travel Writers Association. She came on a show talking about her adventures in the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. And from there, we're like, hey, let's all have fun and talk travel. And she's an amazing writer. She has traveled the world and all over this country. Even during the pandemic, she found out how to get into parks, be safe, and keep traveling. And so I encourage you to check out her articles on blendradioandtv.com and also nationalparktraveling.com. So welcome back, Debbie. How are you? I'm going to call you Fire Monkey because we always do. Not getting away from it just because we're on a different episode, right?
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
I know. I was like, okay. So
anyway, I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Happy to be here talking.
Yeah, talking about a taste of place. And listen, if you've met Debbie, like we had time with her a few years ago, right before the pandemic, where we went to Santa Fe, where she is based out of. And but you were also docenting at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and she took us around the gallery and museum. And so we got to meet her. But when you read all her stories and all of the food and wine she consumes around the world and across the country, Debbie, how do you do it and stay so trim and like healthy? Like, what is it? Is this a monkey thing? Like, are you swinging trees to keep fit? What are you doing? Because I mean,
I'm
we're about
just,
to talk about a whole bunch of food.
I think tasting small portions and then being as active as you can and doing, walking as much as you can. So that's why I really like those wonderful walking food tours because, they combine both my passions, which is, food as well as being active and getting out there and enjoying and exploring an area. So, yeah, I always kind of gravitate towards food tours if I can, just because it's a great introduction to a city or a town. And usually you've got somebody local, a local guide leading you. And yeah, it gives you a great introduction, a great orientation.
Actually, one of the coolest food tours we went to was in Santa Fe, Nancy and I. When we met you, I think we did it at the very end of our trip. And I honestly believed we should have done it at the beginning of our trip, other than our beginning was with you. So that was cool. But you know what I mean? Because I
Yeah,
felt like on the food tour, we got an understanding of the history and the culture and the people. And
right.
I think because Santa Fe is so diverse, right, in history with, European, Spanish, Indian, indigenous, Native American peoples, and Mexican, right? And so when you blend all these cultures together, that means you got amazing food. But was going to all the different restaurants and understanding what pozole is, which is something you may not get in Europe, or maybe you do. I don't know. From what I heard, no. But then all of a sudden, we were at a coffee chocolate shop and drinking Aztec and Mayan, elixirs,
Chocolate.
and
Yep, yep.
oh, that was amazing. And then there's Frito pie, touristy stuff, and then a lot of margaritas. I'm like, this is not your, even the pizza's different. But
It's
we got the
it's truly
basis of the
yeah.
people.
It is, yeah, it is truly. When you're talking about taste of place, I mean, this is a great town for that combination of the foods from those different groups and the people that have settled here and who live here. But it's the town of Chile. I mean, New Mexico is the state of Chile, and that's on every menu, so much of it, and as well as all those dishes you mentioned and the margaritas, which is we have this whole margarita trail. We also have a green cheeseburger trail that you can go through the entire state. I mean, they've created all these
I didn't
wonderful
know that. Hmm.
nuanced food trails for people to do at their leisure when they come and visit. And the food tour in Santa Fe, there's also restaurant tours, there's chocolate tours, there's all sorts of tours here because it does, like I said, it combines things that people, the visitors, really love, which is the food of the place, the wine of the place, or the drink of the place, and then the place itself. And so you
Mm.
get a whole nice melding of the cultural influences with the food. And so they're very popular here. And so I mean, I love living in a foodie town. I mean, who wouldn't?
Well, you also talked about, and you've got an article on the Margarita Trail, and everyone, Debbie's articles are, like I said, on both sites, blendradioandtv.com, and nationalparktraveling.com. But in the show notes, just like Amanda's, everything will be linked in the show notes, no matter if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube or Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening from, just look in the show notes and I'll have the links there. But the Santa Fe, just before we move on to other food tours, Santa Fe, you also, and Georgia O'Keeffe's art really well as a docent there, but you did a cooking class. Was that a Santa Fe cooking school? And then they just themed that class about Georgia O'Keeffe. Didn't she have her book of her recipes or something like that? So I'm just going off the
Correct.
back
It
of
is.
my head. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the Santa Fe Cooking School, and they do a themed O'Keeffe oriented or themed class, which basically takes a number of her recipes and creates them, and then you get to taste them. But it's wonderful because it also interweaves the whole story of O'Keeffe and her time in New Mexico and how she was influenced by growing her own food. She was an organic, gardener before anybody else was, so to speak. And so it's a really great. The cooking school is wonderful, but it's really nice because they have these classes that do hone in on the people and the place.
That's it, the people and the place. And like you say, if you can walk, that's even better. Like I remember with Pike's Place, Pike's Market. Why do I want to call it? Is it Pike's Place? I always want to call it that. Pike's Market.
It's called it's called Pike Place Market.
Okay, yeah, it's Pikes Peak that I get all, and you've been there too. But
and Pike Place Market is another food tour I've done, which is amazing and wonderful as well, and giving you the samples of Seattle and of being on that Pacific Rim and the influences there, and of course the whole coastal area with fish and seafood and all of that. But yeah, I mean, that's why I just think when towns have food tours, I totally hone in on that. It's to me, it's just a wonderful, like I said, a wonderful introduction.
And you went to the ice cream museum, and I got a notification on LinkedIn about the ice cream museum looking for some kind of marketing person, and I'm like, Debbie, let's go. Let's both go so we can go have another scoop of ice cream. But you got to make your own ice cream, and that's the other thing. I think the food tours bring out the kid part of us as adults, because there's some kind of element that's fun, like the ice cream tour. I think you got to make your own ice cream or name one, and that makes
we
something.
Got to name it.
Yeah. Don't you feel like a little bit of a kid again? Because you're not supposed to have that extra scoop, but you do. Like you wanted the gelato on the Venice food tour.
Yes. Yeah.
Same,
I mean, yes, I do think it is. I think it's a very playful way of an activity that for adults as well as for kids and families and everything. But I think it's just fascinating from an adult perspective, the historical context to all that, and even with the ice cream museum, the history of ice cream, and ice cream worldwide, and all that kind of stuff. So anything regarding food is going to have some sort of historical context to it, which is fascinating for people.
Yeah, it's the history of humans, civilization. Because as soon as we started farming, that was the beginning of civilization. Like, okay, we're going to start populating in this way. Now we're going to have to start putting walls around our, farm and all of that kind of stuff, or fences. It just got different. It really changed everything. And you really do learn this. So I mentioned Venice, and that was like you were on the City of Canals. And so that is like, I think on everyone's bucket list to go to Venice. And we're watching all these things about Venice and the flooding, and like we're all like watching. I don't know if all of us, but you know what I mean. We're all kind of like hoping the city remains intact through what's happening through climate change. When you were there, what was that like? What did you get any sense of people worrying about it, or are they just used to this flooding and going away? Or were you really more focused on the gelato?
Well, I think in the back of, yes, it's all omnipresent there. Also, Venice is a problem with the overcrowding, during different times of the year. What it was nice about this food tour, what attracted me was that you got off the main kind of touristy areas of the city, and you saw a more peaceful side to the town, and you walk through very quiet areas, which is hard to believe, but when everybody is congregated around St. Mark's Square and the harbor area, it's massive amounts of people. But when you get off, just get off a couple blocks from that area, and all of a sudden it's pretty peaceful. And so this was a street food tour, and it was wonderful because we went into cheese shops and meat shops, and there was oils and vinegars and wines, and they have Venetian tapas, and we went to these little pubs, the Italian pubs, and we had all certain types of tapas that were, they were fascinating. Little samples of everything, crostinis with sardines, with shrimp, with zucchini, with roasted pumpkin, with everything you can think of, and these oversized little sandwiches, and then lots of wonderfully baked bread and pastries, and then the very proverbial Aperol spritzes, and gelato, of course. Absolutely, you cannot go to any place in Italy without trying the gelato. At least I can't. And so, it was great because it was once again a very local guide. She knew a lot about the town. She knew a lot about the history, and she tied it so seamlessly in with the food, and it was wonderful. She was an incredibly very vivacious woman when I remember this, and she made the tour very fun and very interesting and delicious as well.
So Switzerland is a
Yes.
destination I want to talk about because I know you went to the top of Europe, and everyone,
Yes.
that article is in the latest issue of Vacation Station magazine. And the top of Europe, and you've done, yeah, I mean, you did kayaking in Italy. You did this whole, there was like your big adventure back into Europe after COVID, the pandemic, and all the
Right.
lockdowns and all of that. You're like, yippee, I'm off and I'm kayaking, dang it. And I'm going to go to the top of Europe, and then I'm going to eat some cheese and chocolate on a train. So tell us about this cheese and, I mean, seriously, again, like, did you ride on the top of the train like after this? But cheese and chocolate of Switzerland, that is another bucket list. I mean, isn't that one of the first things we think about, other than the Swiss Alps and
Absolutely.
the sound of music, is cheese and
Absolutely.
chocolate?
Chocolate and cheese. It says the tour was really interesting because it talked about how each Swiss person probably eats around 26 pounds of chocolate a year. And
Oh my
they
gosh.
talked about how chocolate is all the different kinds of the chocolate makers and the history of the chocolate. And so you ride this train and then you go tour a chocolate factory in Brock, and then you go to the Gruyere factory and you learn about their cheese, and then you visit the medieval village of Gruyere and you have more cheese there. If you want fondue, you do whatever you want, but it's all about cheese and chocolate, which are two of my favorite things. If I have to say food, it's going to be cheese and chocolate, especially good cheese and good
Oh,
chocolate.
oh, and I want fondue, you know,
Oh God,
because
that fondue was was incredible. I mean, it was just like you're dipping that crusty bread into that
mm,
bubbling Gruyere cheese fondue, and then there's they serve like boiled potatoes in there, and I mean, it's so good. I mean, it's just
and then there's
wonderful.
wine. You have to
Yeah,
have wine.
of course,
You,
of
oh
course.
my
Yep.
gosh. So you ride the
Yeah.
rails with cheese and chocolate.
Yep. Yep.
What was the
That's the
scenery
chocolate
like?
train.
What was the
Beautiful.
scenery?
Oh yeah, the typical Swiss
Oh,
countryside scenery, which is gorgeous. It's mountainous. It's all the little villages. It's picturesque.
mm,
You can see Heidi running through the woods, so to
oh
speak.
man.
So yeah, it's the best. And Switzerland is one of my favorite countries just because of the scenery, but also the chocolate and the cheese.
Well, I
Can't
know
get
that
any better than
also,
that.
we're going to talk about Paris, and we are going to talk about more chocolate and cheese because we're going to go talk about Oregon. Talk a little bit more about our adventures across America but Debbie FM, Fire Monkey, she's got many names, knows how to hike too. So this all balances out. But a French baking class, you went
Yes.
to Paris, but it was about making a croissant. And listen, when you have a choice of a sandwich being on a roll, a bread, a wrap, or a croissant, I want the croissant. There is like even Christmas, Nancy and I, breakfast always has croissants on Christmas holiday. Like for us,
Yeah.
a good croissant, I mean,
Has to
that
be a
is,
good croissant.
there's something, and you have to be very kind to them. You can't, don't, you like even trying to, no, there's a, there's an art to this. And then you went and learned how to make them. I would
Yeah,
be
when we were,
scared.
it was in Paris on a recent trip, and my husband had the idea because he likes to bake of taking a cooking class, and I said let's do one for croissants because I love croissants, good
Mm,
croissants, just like good chocolate, just like good
mm.
cheese.
Oh, and you can
But
have chocolate
anyway,
on them.
yeah, you can have you pana
Oh,
chocolate. Yes, that's right. But
mm,
La Cuisine Paris was the cooking school, and all their classes are done in English, so they are geared towards visitors who want to do a kind of short-term class. Like theirs was like 3 hours, and so they have classes on everything. All different kinds of pastries and French sauces and you know poultry dishes. But we did this one on the croissants, and it was wonderful. But it really makes you understand that to make a croissant is a very intricate procedure.
Mhm.
And when we asked, the chef said, "What do you think are the three ingredients that are important for a croissant?" We're trying to think, oh, this, that, and other.
Butter.
She goes, "Listen to me, butter, butter, butter."
Oh,
and we're like, okay. And she said, yes, and you have to use butter that's comprised of at least 82% fat content. And that's why
oh.
the croissants in France, croissants in Paris, wherever, taste so good, is
Do
because
not
of
use
the butter.
margarine.
No, no, no.
I
Au
think that if you even
contraire.
brought up the word margarine in
Oh
France,
God.
they would
Oh,
kick you out.
oh,
They
yeah.
would
They would
kick you
look at
out.
you like, okay, what are you? Where are you? Who are you?
It's
But
like plastic.
there are 60 layers of croissant dough in a croissant, and the process takes 48 hours because the dough, as she said, needs to rest after each step. And so, we because our class was only 3 hours, of course, she prepared some dough ahead of time, but we actually made dough, but it was going to have to go through all this other resting stuff. We weren't going to be able to
Yeah.
be around, but we learned, and it's this whole thing about folding, and it's actually fairly complex, but when she broke it down and we did it, it was very doable and we understood and people felt very confident. Now, of course, whether we can, replicate that process at home is different, especially here in Santa Fe. We have a high altitude considerations for baking, and so it would be a challenge, but I think my husband is up to the challenge. He would like to try it and I'm all for it. I'm like, yes, go, go, go,
Yeah, make the croissants. Well, yeah, because it is science is so precise when it comes to baking. Like you
Yes,
can't slam the oven door, you can't, and then the yeast has
no,
to do this and all that. But like
yes,
48
yes,
hours, I didn't know all that,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, and all those
But that's why it's so
processes.
good.
It sounds like you went to like a pottery class because you have to wait for like once your pottery's done to go through the kiln and you can get it like a week later. You know what I mean? It's like that kind
Yeah,
of, but
yeah.
do you like doing classes, like cooking classes when you
I
travel?
I do. I think they're fun. I really
Hmm.
do. I mean, I'm not a huge, galloping gourmet in the kitchen, but when I take the classes, I really enjoy it because it's science, but it's also art. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
a scientific art kind of thing, and there's creativity involved as well. But you have to understand how all the processes work and the temperature and all of that, and how something is, how it rises, and all of those things. And taking the classes though give me, I don't know, they give me a boost in the arm in terms of, like, oh, I could really do this. I could
Hmm.
actually do this. And so it to me it's fun. I enjoy it. And I also enjoy kind of the whole class experience, and especially if the chef, the person teaching it, is fun, and she inserts interesting stories to the whole thing. And she was great. She was very, very, very charming. And she was also great because she said, she was, she'd come around and help you, and she'd want to make sure that you were successful. And so it was one of those feel good classes. But the most important thing was, of course, we got to have the croissants baked, and they
See,
were
I love that. I love that you're doing, and the classes to me is for a food, wine, travel writer, right? And
yeah.
which one came first, the travel, the food, or the wine, Debbie? But as you go around,
Yeah,
I think when you do these classes and these tours, because when you do these tours, and even just meeting chefs as a writer, you start to understand how much work chefs and you know everybody in the industry does, whether you're a
yeah,
winemaker or a chef, or maybe you're
yeah.
a shaved ice maker, but what are you doing behind it? So you start to understand what questions to ask. There's, I think when you do the class parts, that really helps to understand, for writers to
I think
understand more.
so, and I just think for anybody to understand that, we, most people, we love the end product to anything, and of course, anything that or else we buy something, it's a piece of jewelry, but we don't understand what goes on behind the scenes to create this marvelous thing, or this piece of
Hmm.
food, or whatever it is, or this wine. And when you do take a class, or you do take some type of tour, and you understand, you're like, you have a better appreciation for the fact, wow, this really takes time and effort, and it takes somebody who has studied and learned and understands, and has done a lot of trial and error over things. And it's like, it gives you, I think, just a better respect for people who are creating
Hmm.
whatever it is, you know.
I agree. I agree. And so it's when you start going to places like I want to go back to this country. There's also things like going to coffee places, cheese
Of
making
course.
places,
Yep.
right? I mean, I once turned mozzarella into ricotta cheese, and I didn't know there that you could, but I did, which
Yes.
meant I got to eat it earlier. So that's a thing. But when you go to places like coffee, chocolate places, it's a little
Right.
different. And I mean, you can do a class for sure, but it's interesting to me where they source things and like going to a roastery and understanding, oh, we get our coffee beans from here. And this is the process from here. And this is why we choose this. Um, you recently,
Or going to like a coffee farm where you can see the coffee plants, like I
yeah,
did in Hawaii, for example, the island of Hawaii, and
that's right.
seeing, and you can, and that's actually seeing it from, okay, this is really the start of it. What are these? What does it look like at its real essence? And how does it grow, and what are the factors that are responsible for that growth, and all that kind of stuff. So that to me is wonderful when you get to the true, you understand the true farm to table, so to speak.
And then you get to taste it like and go to another coffee shop or a roastery and go, I've seen the coffee bean part of it. And this
Yep.
goes here. And then whenever you drink coffee, that's always kind of to me in the back of my head, like what people do. Whenever I drink something now, it's in the back of my head if I've had that experience and it adds
Yes.
value. It makes you slow down and savor a little
Yeah.
bit
It,
more
it
than
does.
what you would
You just
do,
you
you know?
and you just have a respect for it. It's like
Hmm.
understanding about chocolate, about cacao. How is that grown? Where does it come from? Which countries grow this? All that, the stages of that, and how does it become chocolate, and all of that. And once again, it's there's a very scientific process in there, but it's also an art form.
Mm.
And so to me, all of that, I don't know. It just, to me, that's a wonderful, wonderful part of travel. That
Mm.
when you can combine that and or include that instead of just simply going to a restaurant and having the food, which is wonderful. But if you can do something a little extra, I think I don't know, it just gives you, like I said, a whole newfound appreciation for the place and for the food and for the people.
You said cacao. I just want to keep saying that. It's one of my favorite cacao. It's just a good word. But that brings me to the Creo chocolate company that you went to in Portland, Oregon. I know you love Oregon. So we have to go back there. And I know you went on cheese tours, cheese farm tours like Tillamook. You went to other cheeseries. Can I say that? I want to use that word. I
You
know
want
it's
to say
probably
like, you want to use like dairy. It's like
creamery. I know it's creameries,
creameries.
cheese.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
but I want
No.
to say cheesery because like I want to own
Cheesery.
a I want to own a cheesery and winery all in one place
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
coffee as well because we need that the next morning. Um,
Yeah.
and a bakery. See, it all rhymes.
Yeah. Oh
So
gosh, yes.
I know, but Portland is a dangerous city, and the state of Oregon is dangerous for food, wine, beer, all of it.
Yeah.
And like, let's not
Yeah.
even forget that Debbie likes the other side of the country on the coast, so she can eat lobster
Oh,
in Rockland,
yes.
Maine, right? So I mean,
Yes.
your foodie experiences, I know, but if there's fish, she's going for it versus a steak. We know
Oh,
this. She's
absolutely.
pescatarian. She's like, I'm going in. I want the river to table, the ocean to table.
Yep.
We want that
Yep. Yep.
experience because again, that's from the land, which is really cool. But the Creole
Absolutely.
Chocolate Company, tell us a little bit about that because this is like
Um,
a family like
it
love
is.
and yeah.
It is. The Straub family, Tim Straub and his wife started it, and they've been making chocolate, I think, for, I don't know, maybe 10 years. And, he says it's like chemistry and creativity, and their results have won many awards. And Creo, I think he said, stood for, I believe, I make or create. It's in Spanish
Hmm.
or Latin.
I
And,
believe, yeah. Hmm.
it became a labor of love for them, and they experimented with roasting beans. They experimented with many different things, incorporating chocolate into their recipes. And he said that they ate their way through chocolate shops in the country. They went to a lot of cacao farms in Ecuador, which is a country known for the beans, for some of the best beans in the world. And they found a farm that had an unusual heirloom variety of cacao with a very delicious, and he said very complex flavor. And so these are the beans that this company directly sources for its chocolate. And they make bars and truffles and caramels and chocolate covered fruit and chocolate drinks and even skin products like cocoa whipped body butter and chocolate mint lip balm. Yum, yum.
Okay.
Anyway, so you can take a make bar tour, which is this wonderful tour where you can learn about where the chocolate comes from, how it's basically made, and then you get to design your own chocolate bar. So, which is wonderful. You know, they have the bars, but you get to design your chocolate bar. So they have all sorts of different things that you can put in your chocolate bar. And also, of course, you get to sample all these different wonderful chocolates like dark orange, Meyer lemon pie, caramelized white chocolate, black sesame seeds,
it, Fire
spicy
Monkey.
dark, whiskey milk chocolate. I mean, you know, chocolate made with different chilies. I mean, it's crazy. And so, yeah, and then, you know, you get to make your bars, and then they, you know, get put into the machine to get the ingredients inside of them, and then they come out, voila, and you get to package them and take them home. And it is definitely a highlight because you can add anything in there. They had toffee and coconut and dried berries and peppermint and sprinkles and you know.
So it's like you can make your own bark too, like that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So it was
what a good gift too.
Such fun. It is a good gift, and it was fun. I mean, it was such a fun class because once again, it's not only knowledgeable, you know, it's informative, but, you know, of course it's tasty, and, you know, everybody wants the taste, but they also, in the process of enjoying the taste, they're also learning something. So it's a fun way. These types of things are fun ways for people to learn things versus sitting down with a book and reading it, or, you know what I mean, or hearing a lecture and not getting to actually see
taste
or taste anything. I'm a very tactile
smell.
and I'm a you know, I use my senses to learn. And I think most people, if you can reinforce knowledge with use of the senses, you know, it's going to stay. The staying power is greater, you know.
It's the same thing. Like, I know we're so digital now, but I'm so old school. Like, if I have an online calendar, I will never know what I'm doing when. I have to write everything down, because if I write it down, I remember it. Like, I know what I'm doing, then I know it in my head because I wrote it down. But if I type something, I don't know, it went into the cyberspace, like it sucked it up, and I have no clue like what I just did. You know what I mean? There's a weird thing about that.
It is a weird, I mean, and people, you know, some people learn really well by, you know, the tactile sense, and some people learn really well by, you know, the visual and auditory senses. And, you know, I mean, and some people have this, you know, real strong, you know, the taste or you know, the smell. I mean, you know, we have those senses that for some people those senses are stronger than others. But, you know, you give somebody a smell, and if it's a smell, they're going to remember it, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, I remember smelling that, or I remember hearing that song when I was 16 years old. You know, it's just one of those things. And so, you know, when you travel, you incorporate all of those senses, which is why I think so many times people have so many memorable experiences, is because they have used all these senses to really cement those experiences.
Now, I know I'm going to go back to IFWTWA now as we close up here. The International Food, Wine, Travel Writers Association, they have a conference coming up that they do in every October. Well, not every October, but every year. The annual one is in October, and they get to cruise from Vancouver down to Southern California, which is very exciting. And they're going to definitely have some culinary experiences there. But like I said, we first met Debbie through IFWTWA. I think you came on one of the IFWTWA shows, and that's how we connected in the Sea of Cortez. And you were on the little boat then. And our latest interview coming up with Debbie is about barge cruising in France. So stay tuned for that coming up the 4th Tuesday of this month. But before you go, talk about food and wine and travel and IFWTWA. How long have you been a member, do you think? I mean, it's been a long time. I can't even, it's been at least 6, 7, 8 years, maybe?
Yeah, maybe
10 years?
Maybe
10?
Maybe 10
I think it's over 10. I think it is
so
over
too.
10.
Yeah,
I think so.
too. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool.
It's nice. It's a nice organization because it does combine those important aspects. The travel, the food, the wine, and it's nice to meet other writers who have various passions. You meet somebody who's just really into wine, or you meet somebody who's really into food and cooking, and it's a really I like because it's inclusive in that respect,
Hmm.
and they try to do a lot of educational and informative sessions where you can Zoom and learn from this winery that the owner comes on and talks, or this chef, or this destination that comes on, and so you can learn all about these different things. So yeah, I think it's a good organization. I've been pleased with it.
That's awesome. And you're going on one of their media trips, group trip. I know you do a lot of solo, but this also allows you to have that networking. And
Yeah.
and this is going to involve food too, I believe. You're going to have some barbecue in Memphis soon.
Yes, it's going to involve a whole lot of
Oh.
things, but good food is always there in Memphis, as well as good music, and of course, famous sites. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because it's been too long since I've been to Memphis.
Awesome, awesome. So everyone, again, the Fire Monkey, Debbie Stone is her name, the travel writer, Debbie Stone. You can also follow her on Twitter at just type in Debbie Stone, you'll find her. Travel Stone, I think your handle is. I just
Yeah.
type it up, it comes up. My computer knows your computer on Twitter. But you can also read her stories, GlenRadioandTV.com, NationalParkTraveling.com, and various other media outlets. So keep up with her. Follow her Twitter and also LinkedIn. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, IFWTWA. Always fun, doing these shows and chatting with writers and destinations to find out what's going on. Basically, the world is our oyster. We just need to get out there and taste it. So again, the Food Wine Travel Writers, International Food Wine Travel Writers Association website is IFWTWA.org. Their conference is open to members and non-members, so check that out, coming up in October. Whether you're a writer or a destination, go check it out. So thank you so much, Debbie. Thank you all for joining us on today's show.